Hello everyone, this is the InStyle Knitting Studio. Today, we will look at the technique of circular knitting. It is very important to know how to knit in the round. There are many items such as socks, mittens, and necklines. In these items, seamless circular fabric looks best. To knit in the round, 5 needles are used, which are called double-pointed needles. Circular needles on a cord or cable are also used. Here they are. Circular needles are used for larger items. For an example, let's take a double-pointed needle. We will cast on using 2 needles in a common, universal way. It is better to cast on a number of stitches that is a multiple of 4. This is necessary so that we can evenly distribute the stitches on 4 needles afterwards. I will cast on 32 stitches and 1 extra stitch. In total, I will cast on 33 stitches. We are done casting on, that is, we will always cast on the required number of stitches plus 1 extra. Now I will explain why. We take 1 needle out. Now we will distribute, in my case, 8 stitches on 4 needles. We arrange this whole setup in a way that is comfortable for us in our hands. On the last needle, I have the last stitches. Here, I have 1 stitch extra. Now we need to join this round. Pay attention so that this seam, our cast-on edge, is turned inward to the circle. Nothing here is twisted at all. Now we need to join this circle. This first extra stitch we will slip with the right needle. Onto the right needle, then we yarn over the previous stitch onto our slipped stitch like this. And we return this stitch to the left needle. Thus, we have joined our circle. This stitch will be counted as the first stitch. I will mark this stitch with a marker for clarity. She will be considered the first loop. With this transfer, we have kind of reduced 1 loop, this extra one of ours. So, I have formed 9 loops on this needle and 7 on this one. Accordingly, everything is correct, meaning there should be 8 loops, but in this case, it turns out that there are 7 here and 9 there. Next, we will begin the knitting. How are we going to knit? How is knitting done in a circle at all? In a circle, it turns out a little differently. That is, in order to get stockinette stitch, we will knit continuously with knit stitches in the round. So, there is no more transferring here. It turns out we knit continuously in one direction. And to achieve stockinette stitch, we must knit continuously with classic knit stitches. I would like to point out that only classic stitches are knitted through the front loop. This is a feature of circular knitting. Well, to achieve garter stitch, we will alternate knit and purl rows. Let's try to knit stockinette stitch. How knitting works in a circle at all. Here we have transferred this stitch, still holding it so that our original cast-on edge is in the middle. We take the 5th needle and begin knitting knit stitches through the front loop of all the stitches on the first needle. I also note that you don't need to mark the first stitch with a marker. You can orient yourself by this thread at the end. That is, where the end of the yarn is, there is the start of the row. Now we will knit all the stitches on one of the needles with the free needle. That's it, we have knitted, meaning we have freed our first needle. We now have a new row on this needle, which was free. Now it turns out that with this first needle, we will knit the stitches that were on the second needle, make sure that the seam is in the middle. This first row is very difficult. Especially for me, I really do not like this circular knitting. I prefer to knit with circular needles. I do not like double-pointed needles. Next, we take the free needle and continue knitting in the round. Now we have freed the other needle. Next, we will also knit the stitches from the next needle with the newly freed needle. So we've reached the marker. Let's pull the short end of the thread and continue as before. That is to say, in circular knitting, there are no edge stitches. We knit from the first to the last stitch, all in knit stitches through the front loop. So we simply knit all the stitches from each needle, all in knit. It is very difficult to knit the first row. Everything keeps getting twisted, but the following rows are somewhat better. The knitting gets adjusted and the needles fit better. You somehow get used to this circular knitting. Here, the advantage is that sewing is very good for mittens. For gloves and for hats, hats are usually knitted with circular needles. So, little by little, we knit the stitches on each needle in knit through the front loop and watch. Making sure nothing slips off, it's better to pull the first stitch tightly so we don't see a gap at the junction of our rows. Well, it turns out somewhat like this. The main thing here is to get the hang of it, and remember one rule: knit classic knit stitches without any edges, and learn to knit the first stitch. I think this lesson was useful for you. If so, give a like, subscribe, and see you in the next lesson. Bye bye.